Every day, millions of people light a cigarette without thinking twice. Some do it for stress, some for habit, some because they've done it for so long that it feels almost automatic. Today, smoking is often associated with addiction, disease, and modern life. But what if I told you the story of smoking didn't begin with cigarettes? It didn't begin with tobacco companies. It didn't even begin with tobacco. It began thousands of years earlier, around campfires, inside caves, and during ceremonies that ancient people believed connected them to something beyond the physical world. Long before smoking became a habit, it was a ritual, and the first people who inhaled smoke probably weren't trying to relax. They believed the smoke carried something invisible, a prayer, a message, or perhaps a doorway to another state of mind. So when did humans first begin smoking? The answer is more complicated than it seems, because smoke has surrounded humanity almost since the day we learned to control fire. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, our ancestors gathered around flames for warmth, protection, and cooking. They breathed smoke every single day. But breathing smoke from a fire is not the same as choosing to inhale smoke from a specific plant. That choice changed everything. At some point in history, humans stopped treating smoke as a byproduct of fire and started treating it as an experience. Imagine an ancient hunter returning with unfamiliar leaves or dried plants. Someone throws them into the fire. A strange aroma rises into the air. The smell is different. The feeling is different. Maybe someone leans closer. Maybe someone deliberately inhales. Maybe nothing happens. Or maybe everything changes. No one knows exactly how that first moment happened, because plants leave almost no trace after thousands of years. Unlike stone tools or bones, smoke disappears, which makes the search for the origins of smoking one of archaeology's greatest challenges. Instead of relying on a single discovery, scientists combine tiny clues, burned seeds, residue inside ancient pipes, chemical traces preserved in dental plaque, microscopic particles trapped in ceremonial objects. Each clue is small on its own. Together, they begin telling a remarkable story. And that story reveals something surprising. Humans didn't invent smoking because they were addicted. The earliest evidence suggests something very different. Smoking was first connected to belief, healing, ceremony, and the search for experiences that ordinary life couldn't provide. Long before written history, people were already asking questions that still exist today. Can plants heal us? Can they change our minds? Can they bring us closer to the spiritual world? The answers they discovered shaped cultures across continents. But not all cultures smoked the same plants, and not all smoking served the same purpose. In one part of the world, a sacred herb became central to religious ceremonies. In another, a completely different plant was burned for medicine. Thousands of miles apart, without any contact, human societies reached a surprisingly similar conclusion. Certain plants could change how people felt, how they thought, and sometimes how they experienced reality itself. For decades, archaeologists believed they would never know when humans first started smoking. Unlike bones or stone tools, smoke leaves almost nothing behind. It vanishes within seconds. So how do you find evidence of something that disappears into the air? You don't look for the smoke. You look for what the smoke leaves behind. Deep inside ancient caves, burial sites, and abandoned villages, researchers began finding small objects that didn't seem important at first. Tiny stone pipes, clay tubes, charred seeds, dark residue clinging to the inside of ceremonial bowls. For years, many of these artifacts sat quietly in museum collections. No one knew exactly what they had been used for. Then modern chemistry changed everything. Using techniques that can detect molecules thousands of years old, scientists started analyzing the black residue trapped inside ancient pipes. The results were astonishing. Some of those pipes still contained traces of nicotine. Others contained chemical compounds linked to cannabis. Suddenly, smoking wasn't just speculation anymore. It had become science. One of the oldest confirmed pieces of evidence comes from North America. Archaeologists discovered ancient smoking pipes dating back more than 3,000 years. Chemical analysis revealed traces of tobacco. But the tobacco these people smoked wasn't the same as the cigarette sold today. It was a wild species, far stronger, far less processed, and almost certainly used very differently. Most researchers believe it wasn't an everyday habit. It was reserved for ceremonies, important gatherings, or spiritual rituals. In many indigenous cultures, smoke was believed to carry prayers into the sky. The rising smoke wasn't just something you watched. It was something you sent, a bridge between people and the unseen world. Thousands of miles away, another discovery was rewriting history. High in the mountains of western China, near the ancient Pamir Plateau, archaeologists uncovered wooden braziers inside a cemetery nearly 2,500 years old. The stones inside those braziers looked ordinary, until scientists tested them. They found chemical traces of cannabis. Not just any cannabis, but varieties containing unusually high levels of psychoactive compounds. This suggested something remarkable. These ancient people weren't simply burning plants for warmth or fragrance. They may have intentionally selected stronger cannabis during funerary ceremonies. If that's true, then smoking wasn't only about the body. It was about the mind. But why would people deliberately alter their state of consciousness? Anthropologists think the answer lies in something deeply human. Every culture has moments that feel bigger than everyday life. Birth, death, victory, loss. Moments when ordinary words don't seem enough. Across the world, different civilizations search for ways to create extraordinary experiences. Some used music, some danced for hours, some fasted, others used smoke, not to escape reality, but to experience it differently. It's tempting to imagine ancient smoking as the beginning of modern addiction, but history paints a more complicated picture. For most early societies, smoking wasn't casual. It was controlled. It had rules, specific people, specific places, specific occasions. Only much later, as civilizations grew, trade expanded, and powerful plants spread across continents, did smoking begin transforming from a sacred ritual into something far more ordinary. For thousands of years, smoking remained something local. One community burned one plant. Another community used something completely different. There was no global habit, no worldwide culture of smoking. The world was simply too large, and people were too far apart. That changed in 1492. When European explorers arrived in the Americas, they encountered something they had never seen before. Men and women holding burning rolls of dried leaves, calmly inhaling the smoke, then slowly releasing it into the air. To the Europeans, it looked strange. Some even described it as frightening. How could anyone willingly breathe smoke into their lungs? But curiosity has always been one of humanity's strongest instincts. Before long, the visitors tried it themselves, and history would never be the same. The plant they discovered was tobacco. For many indigenous peoples across North and South America, tobacco was not an everyday pleasure. It was sacred. It played a role in ceremonies, peace agreements, healing rituals, and communication with the spiritual world. Some tribes believed the rising smoke carried prayers toward the heavens. Others believed it created a connection between humans and nature. Smoking wasn't entertainment. It was meaning. When sailors carried tobacco back across the Atlantic, Europe didn't immediately see it as a recreational habit. Many believed it was medicine. Doctors recommended tobacco for headaches, toothaches, digestive problems, even the plague. Today, those ideas sound unbelievable. But medicine in the 16th century looked very different from medicine today. Without modern science, people often judged a remedy simply by whether it seemed to produce an effect. And tobacco certainly did. It relaxed some people, stimulated others, made the body feel different. To many, that was enough to believe it had healing powers. Within just a few decades, tobacco spread through royal courts, ports, military camps, and trading cities. Kings tried it. Merchants sold it. Farmers began growing it. What had once been a sacred plant used by relatively small communities was becoming a global commodity, and wherever trade ships traveled, tobacco followed. But something else was happening. Smoking was slowly losing its original meaning. In many indigenous cultures, every ceremony had rules. Who could smoke, when they could smoke, why they could smoke. Those traditions gave the practice purpose. As tobacco spread across continents, many of those traditions disappeared. The ritual remained. The meaning faded. Smoking was becoming less about spirituality and more about habit. Then came industry. Factories made tobacco cheaper. Mass production made it faster. Advertising made it desirable. For the first time in history, smoking was no longer limited to ceremonies or special occasions. It became part of everyday life, a habit repeated millions of times across every continent. By the early 20th century, cigarettes had become one of the most successful consumer products ever created. And with that success came a hidden cost, one that the world wouldn't fully understand. For decades, the same smoke that once symbolized healing would eventually become one of the greatest public health challenges in human history. For thousands of years, smoking belonged to moments that felt extraordinary. A ceremony, a funeral, a celebration, a prayer. It wasn't something people reached for every hour. It was something they prepared for, something they respected. But over time, that relationship began to change, not because tobacco changed, because humans did. Our ancestors understood something they couldn't explain. Certain plants could change the way a person felt. Today, science finally knows why. When nicotine enters the body, it reaches the brain in less than 20 seconds. There, it attaches to specialized receptors that normally respond to one of the brain's own chemical messengers. That tiny interaction triggers the release of dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in learning, motivation, and reward. The brain notices something important. That felt good. And almost immediately, it begins remembering how to repeat it. This system didn't evolve because of tobacco. It evolved millions of years earlier. Long before cigarettes, long before farming, long before humans even existed. The reward system helped our ancestors remember behaviors that increased their chances of survival. Finding food, drinking water, building relationships, learning useful skills. It encouraged repetition. That system helped humans survive, but it also made us vulnerable, because once a substance could activate that same reward circuit, the brain treated it like something worth repeating. For most of history, access to tobacco was limited. It had to be grown, prepared, transported. It wasn't available everywhere. But the Industrial Revolution changed that. Machines could roll thousands of cigarettes in a single day. Railroads carried them across countries. Ships carried them across oceans. Factories made them inexpensive, and advertising did the rest. Smoking was no longer presented as a ritual. It became a lifestyle. Billboards showed confidence. Movies showed elegance. Celebrities made it look effortless. For millions of people, smoking stopped being a choice they occasionally made. It became part of who they believed they were. Then science caught up. By the middle of the 20th century, researchers were uncovering a growing body of evidence linking long-term smoking to serious diseases. The more data accumulated, the clearer the picture became. Governments introduced warning labels. Advertising rules changed. Public attitudes shifted. One of history's most celebrated habits became one of its most debated. Yet despite everything we've learned, millions of people around the world still smoke today. Why? Because history leaves marks that don't disappear overnight. Habits, traditions, culture, stress, identity, they're all woven together. Human behavior is rarely shaped by a single reason. It's shaped by thousands of years of experience. Maybe that's the most fascinating part of this story. Smoking was never just about a plant. It was about curiosity, the desire to explore, to heal, to connect, to belong, to change how we experience the world. The object changed over time. The motivation changed with it. A sacred ritual became a medical treatment. A medical treatment became a luxury. A luxury became a habit, and for many, a habit became an addiction. The next time you see smoke rising into the air, it's worth remembering that you're looking at something with an incredibly long history. A history that stretches from ancient campfires to sacred ceremonies to global trade routes to modern laboratories. One simple act, repeated across thousands of years, reflecting how humans constantly reshape the meaning of the things they create. Because history isn't only written in books. Sometimes it's carried by the smallest everyday actions. And those actions can reveal just as much about human nature as any ancient monument ever could. Every habit has a history. Every ordinary object has an extraordinary past. The more we understand the past, the better we understand ourselves. Subscribe for more documentaries exploring the hidden stories that shaped humanity. Until next time, keep asking why.